Sit back, close your eyes, and listen. The work of composer Joseph Phillips, The Gray Land.
The piece premiered in 2018, and then we're talking 2020, and it's even more relevant.
And then there's Dreams of a New Day, songs by Black composers.
I dream a world where no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth.
Sung by baritone Will Liverman.
That I wanted, to showcase Black composers for their contributions in art, song, and, celebrate that.
Meet the next new and now generation of Black classical composers and performers this Black History Month. From the Second Street Dreams Audio Network, this is the February 2021 edition of Classical Music in Color. News, information, and music about people of color in classical music. I'm Judelin Gibson. This is the first Black History Month since the killing of George Floyd seemed to awaken many people in and out of the classical music community to the serious inequities of life in the U.S. for Black Americans. Now, that was a run-on sentence. It's one manifestation, though, of 2020 running on and into 2021. So on this particular Black History Month, I'm thrilled to present my first guest.
Joseph Phillips, and Joseph C. Phillips Jr., and I'm a composer, and I have an ensemble. I'm conductor of my ensemble called Numinous, and we have a new album out called The Gray Land, which is a mono opera starring Rebecca L. Hargrove as soprano, and the narrator is Kenneth Browning.
Tell me what it's about.
Well, essentially, the opera is just the story of a Black mom and her son, and really her I guess you can kind of say it's like a day in a life, a way to talk about a lot of the different issues, whether it be police brutality, whether it be just the joy of Black fraternity and celebrating Black joy, or promises that everyone wants, which does not happen for everyone. So it was just a kind of a way to envelop all of those kind of themes in one form.
Well, I found it interesting that you were inspired to write it or compose it after Ferguson, Michael Brown, but you had been working on it prior to that.
Yeah, I actually had been, 2011-ish is when I was thinking about writing an opera about essentially all of the things I talked about in The Gray Land, but it wasn't called The Gray Land. I didn't have really the form. And actually, I was thinking it would be something, an opera not centered around, but like Justice Clarence Thomas. He would be kind of like this focal point, and then I can talk about all of these issues with his character. But then Ferguson happened in 2014. And also at that time, my wife and I were about to have a kid, our first kid. We've been trying for a long time, and it was like we finally had it. It was going to happen. And of course, just as in the preparation, I'm already thinking like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to be as a dad? What is the kid going to be like? What is parenthood going to be like? And then to have Ferguson happen in that summer while she was pregnant, really kind of like, well, what are we bringing this kid into? And so then that kind of got me thinking about changing the frame from the Clarence Thomas to a mother and child. And of course, I was thinking of my own mother, single mom. And actually, I felt that framing it with the mom and the son, I could talk about more things that I wouldn't have been able to talk about if my original idea had happened.
Phillips' music in the Gray Land is accompanied by the words of Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, author Isaac Butler, abolitionist Frederick Douglass, and Paul Laurence Dunbar, with his poem set to music, We Wear the Mask.
We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask.
We Wear the Mask. Words by Paul Laurence Dunbar. Narrated by Kenneth Browning with music by Joseph Phillips from his mono opera, The Gray Land. So I want to talk about the songs, the music, and you've titled them such interesting titles. The Sunken Place. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, you know, that was actually, I think that was the last scene of the opera that I had finished. And I knew that it was Liberty Bell, which was the one right before Sunken Place, and then after it, the Streets of Sighs. They were already written. But I knew I needed something, even just dramatically, like it just didn't feel right to go right from Liberty Bell to the last, this last scene I just described about the mom and the son getting killed. So I was like, I need something there. And I had not seen Get Out when it came out for what, just being busy. So it was about a year later. And then I finally saw it. And, I had heard about people talking about this idea of the sunken place. And, it didn't register until I saw it. Part of me was like, it was just way too, and I was like, this just seems too obvious, like just to have something related to the sunken place. But then I read something from Jordan Peele about how he said the sunken place is this metaphor for the suppression of Black people. That's it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I have to find a way to incorporate that concept in the Gray Land.
And now here's The Sunken Place from The Gray Land. The Sunken Place from Joseph Phillips' The Greyland, his mono opera. The album was recorded in January and February of 2020 at Octavan Audio in Mount Vernon, New York. That was right before the world shut down. I spoke to Joseph Phillips while he was spending his sabbatical and the quarantine in Durango, Colorado. During normal times, he'd be in Brooklyn, New York. Since we don't know when live performances in front of live audiences will resume, I asked Mr. Phillips about his plans for 2021.
I'm actually doing my next project is I'm doing this an opera based on the 1619 Project, the New York Times. So it's actually a series of operas. And I've been reading a lot about, history, the historical things, more than I did for the Greyland. So now I'm really I read about these things. I was reading about Reconstruction just a couple of months ago, and kind of the same thing with the Frederick Douglass quote. You read about these things about, voter suppression or just like putting down people not having a voice, and the violence that would happen because of, people just trying to exercise their rights. And part of it is it's very depressing because, again, you're thinking this is over 100 years ago. But then the other part is you think, well, people did come through this, and there was a way they were able to figure out a way to make things better than it was in in Reconstruction. So I mean, I have these kind of feelings now where you feel depressed and hopeless, but then you also realize that, like the protest, that people out there just really came out, and you feel very hopeful that it's not, at least now, more and more people understand, and maybe something will happen and change it.
We've been talking to composer Joseph Phillips. He recently released a recording of his mono opera, The Greyland. We thank him for giving us permission to use 2 works from the album. If you'd like to hear the rest of it, and you really should, there are links on the Classical Music in Color page on secondstreetdreams.com. Phillips used poet Paul Laurence Dunbar as one of his muses. Baritone Will Liverman has the words of poet Langston Hughes on his new album, Dreams of a New Day, Songs by Black Composers. That's coming up right after I tell you about some scholarship opportunities. The National Association for Music Education has many scholarship and competition opportunities. Here are 2. There's the Davidson Fellowship. They're looking for students who've created a significant piece of work, including music, aimed at improving the lives of others. You have to be under 18 to win grants of up to $50,000. The deadline to apply is March 10th. The VSA International Young Soloist Competition is for musicians between 14 and 25 who are disabled. The Kennedy Center will select 4 winners who will receive a $2,500 prize, among other good things, including a chance to perform at the Kennedy Center in D.C. The deadline to apply is March 2nd. There are other scholarship opportunities on the National Association for Music Education website. Look for the links on the Classical Music in Color page on secondstreetdreams.com.
I dream a world where no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth.
Dreams of a New Day. Baritone Will Liverman performing I Dream a World, composed by Damian Sneed, with the words of a poem by Langston Hughes.
I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way.
It's from the Baritone's latest and perhaps most personal album, Dreams of a New Day, Songs by Black Composers. It features the work of composers like Henry Burleigh and Margaret Bonds, and the words of other poets like Langston Hughes.
That I wanted, one to, showcase Black composers for their contributions in art, song, and, celebrate that and have it be something where people can listen to it and feel encouraged, bringing attention to Black stories, too.
Liverman has dedicated the album to his late mentor, Robert Brown, who taught at the Governor's School for the Arts in Richmond, Virginia.
And it's centered around a piece that I commissioned called Two Black Churches. And I commissioned the composer, Sean O'Pebolo, he's a Chicago-based composer, and he wrote this piece, Two Black Churches, specifically for the album. That was like the center point.
This is Ballad of Birmingham, one of two pieces that make up Two Black Churches.
Mother dear, she asks, may I go downtown instead of out to play, and march the streets of Birmingham in a freedom march, freedom march today. No, baby, no, you may not go, for the dogs are fierce and wild, and clubs and hoses and guns and jails aren't good for a little child. But mother, I won't be alone. Other children will go with me, The mother smiled to know her child was in the sacred place. But that smile was the last smile to come upon her face. For when she heard the explosion, her eyes grew wide. When her eyes grew wide, she raised the streets of Birmingham, calling for her child. She clawed through bits of glass and brick, then lifted out a shoe. Oh, here's the shoe my baby wore, but baby, where are you?
Ballad of Birmingham, one of two pieces from two black churches. Liverman recorded the album in the summer of 2020 amid all the rules about safety after being off the stage for a while. Were you out of practice?
A little bit. It was, recordings. The recordings are tricky because sometimes you go back and change and do record things a second, third time, so you have to really be cautious of how much voice you're giving. So, but we made it through.
Andy's Happy Dreams of a New Day, songs by Black composers, is coming out during this particular Black History Month.
I think it's good timing, especially with all the events of the world happening now. I think this, the album is coming out at a good time.
If the pandemic allows, baritone Will Liverman is scheduled to star in the Met Opera's production of Terence Blanchard's Fires Shut Up in My Bones. That would be in the fall of this year.
The cool thing about it is, fingers crossed that it happens. My first 2 gigs that are hopefully going to happen are by Black composers, which to me is, I'm hoping, like a step in the right direction of, having representation on the operatic stages. It's a hopeful thing to look forward to as we're starting to get out of this.
Black or white, whatever race you be, we'll share
the name of the album, Dreams of a New Day, with the voice of baritone Will Liverman, with pianist Paul Sanchez on the CD label. There's a link on the Classical Music in Color page on secondstreetdreams.com.
hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream, my world, my world.
Our coda this month is a big thank you to the doctors and nurses working tirelessly still to keep us alive. The folks who pick up our trash, deliver our food, the workers at the grocery and drug stores, and let's not forget the police, firefighters, and teachers, too. And of course, a thank you, too, to my guest, composer Joseph Phillips and baritone Will Liverman. Thank you both for allowing me to use your music on this program. I'm Judelyn Gibson. Stay safe, stay healthy like your life depends on it, because it does, even with the vaccine, if you can get it. We are the Second Street Dreams audio network on the radio and on the WWW. Thank you for listening to the February 2021 edition of Classical Music in Color.